What is up, y'all? Thank you for joining me for another episode of Otherwise with Jane Harvey. It is a Wednesday and it's almost 1 o'clock where I am, and I'm a little sleepy. I tend to get a little lull around 1 or 2, and I'm thinking it might be because I drink really sweet coffee in the morning, and I think that I'm spiking my glucose levels. So today is my first day doing matcha and green tea, which I've done no coffee before, and I've enjoyed it, but I always find that the first day is tough. So not only is it my nap witching hour, but I have no coffee. I have a little caffeine. I've got some matcha caffeine. I've got some green tea caffeine, but I'm a little blinky. So we're going to go slow on this one. This is a reflection podcast. And those of you who are watching on YouTube, I have my phone here with me. I actually brought some notes for this reflection because Tyler and I are reflecting on my chat with Tyler Crabb. And he and I had such an interesting conversation, and it was really rich and really full of material to investigate. So I want to make sure that I get to everything. So let's jump in. So first thing is just a correction. Tyler and I talk about the Gem Center where he paints, where actually my husband and I now have a studio because I paint, which we also talk about on the show, and I'll get to that. But I mistakenly call it the Gem Institute, I think once or twice. It is, in fact, the Gem Center. It's in Boise, Idaho, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes and you can check it out. It's a very beautiful space, and they recently opened a very cool gallery on the first floor called Mudai. I'll link to that as well, so you can check that out. Awesome stuff happening over there, and it is indeed called the Gem Center and not the Gem Institute. Getting right into my conversation with Tyler, which definitely started with a bang, seems to be my way when interviewing. I wanted to touch on what Tyler shared a couple experiences of doubt that I thought were really interesting, and he and I touched on struggling to validate your spirituality when it's questioned by society or by your family or by yourself, and the nature of doubt being complicated. And Tyler is very devout in his religious beliefs, but he has confronted a lot of doubt, and he's worked through that doubt. And I think that this was interesting for me because I don't claim any particular religion or spirituality as my own. I am a very open-minded, curious person who thinks that all facets of spiritual pursuit are valuable. And with that open-mindedness comes a really healthy dose of, I don't want to say skepticism, but doubt, just a sense of, why is that true? How is that true? And it's really easy to be doubtful when we can't see proof. The human loves evidence. We are built on a system that demands evidence in order to validate. And even if we feel that we have evidence in the sense of a feeling or a sense of knowing or the witnessing or experiencing of a miracle, the miraculous, the spiritual, there's still a margin of doubt that can exist. And we have to be the arbiters of our own truth. And that is hard. That's a complicated thing to do. It can be easier when you are aligned with an organized religion. You can find commonality, which is nice. Commonality is great. We love agreeing, we love getting together as a group and feeling the same way about something. But even when you participate in a larger scale spiritual organization or a larger scale organization of any kind, you might still find yourself in a state of doubt and in a state of skepticism. And I think that what we choose to do with that doubt and with that skepticism is ultimately up to us. It really comes down to who you are and what you think is the right thing for you in any given moment and also over the course of your life. So I thought it was really interesting to jump in with Tyler to doubt straight away, because he is very, very vocal about his faith and very vocal about his beliefs. And I'm not implying that he doubts his belief. I mean, he speaks very clearly to doubts he's experienced, but I thought it was fascinating to start there. And from there, we went into fear versus faith and how they're both things that we can't see, and how we as a species tend to put more of we put our eggs in the fear basket and not the faith basket. And without sounding woefully uninformed about the various different regions of the brain, I'm pretty sure this is a reptilian response where we're looking to, and it's an amygdala response, we're looking to survive. And so we're anticipating negativity. And then we definitely do confirmation bias. I'm so straying into technical territory in brain function that I don't want to misrepresent. But there's a urgency that we can feel in our minds, in our brains, that it's a fear-based urgency, and that can feel so real to us that we validate whatever narrative it is that has elicited that response, because that response feels so impactful that it has to be true. It has to be real, when actually it doesn't have to be either of those things. And it often isn't either of those things. But if we're not paying attention, we can create an entire life based on fear instincts and the sensation of fear or worry or anxiety or stress because of how powerful it is. So I loved that we got a chance to talk, and I got a chance to think more about, in my own life, where do I choose fear? Where do I choose faith? And what does it feel like? What does the difference feel like? And why can it be so easy to choose fear in a moment, and really pressing myself to exercise that pause, because I think the stopping and observing the thought process is what helps us so much to make a more intentional decision versus a knee-jerk reaction decision. Something else that we talked about that I just want to touch on briefly was mental health, and we talked about mania and schizophrenia, and Tyler said that he had a manic episode in which he felt he was acting in a schizophrenic way. I wanted to follow up on that. I did a little research through the Mayo Clinic on what some of the symptoms of schizophrenia are, because I wanted to make sure that we weren't misrepresenting the illness. It does seem that mania can be a symptom of schizophrenia, but it is not necessarily an indicator that it's there. It can be indicative of bipolar disorder or a different disorder altogether, or perhaps of an isolated experience of mania. And schizophrenia can manifest in a more depressive or anhedonic way, where there's more apathy and an inability to experience pleasure, as well as hallucination and delusion and fixed ideation, regardless of external truth. So I wanted to touch on that and clarify that, because I think it's important. Schizophrenia is a really evolving disease, and it's one that I don't have as much of an understanding of as I would like to, having a family member who has it. Sometimes it can be difficult to research because it's very poignant. But what I do know about it, I evolved recently, which is that you can experience manic and depressive episodes within the framework of schizophrenia, but that does not necessarily indicate schizophrenia. So it's not that I don't think we misspoke, but the two are not necessarily linked as such. I like this to that we talked about, I said, and then I got really hot on it because I like the way it sounds, but I said that it's important to audit your thought structure and decide which thoughts you endorse and which thoughts you don't endorse. And this is something I've been really, really paying attention to since my interview with Tyler. And this is why I love my job so much, because I just get to perpetually work on being a better version of myself via the research I get to do with each one of our interviews. But we think a bunch of stuff all the time. And I actually just recently restarted Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way. And she talks about blurts when you're doing an affirmation. So say your affirmation is, I am an incredible artist and I sell my work for, its highest value. Then some narrative will come into your head telling you why that's not true and why you can't have that and why you're arrogant for even thinking it. And she calls it a blurt, which I think is great. It's essentially like a negative, painful, critical thought. And if our brain is left unchecked, these thoughts can happen a lot. And I think it varies for different people, but over the course of my life, I've come to see that we all experience a negative narrative that can kind of run on a varying degree of frequency in the background that can come from critical parents or mean teachers. I know I had a teacher in first grade who really didn't like me and was pretty cruel to me. I think at one point she told me that I was a bad kid, which sucked. It was really hurtful to hear. And I was just working again through The Artist's Way this morning after starting it up recently and had that memory and was like, damn, Miss Roberta, that sucked that you said that to me. I remember that now at 32. And auditing our thought process helps to note, it helps us to just identify. And that's the whole point, is like, okay, write out all the things that you want and then write out the things that are standing in your way, telling you that you can't have them, and start really looking at those thoughts and dissecting them and figure out like, where are they coming from? Why are you thinking them? Why are you thinking them and then thinking, oh, that's real, that's true? Why are you endorsing that thought? And it gives us so much power. It's such a reclamation of power when we just taking a pause, looking at our thought structure and saying, okay, what am I thinking? These are the 5 thoughts I just thought in the last 3 minutes. What are they? And which ones are totally nasty? Because probably, honestly, at any given moment, it could be from 1 to 4. Who knows? Could be 1 to 5. Could be 0 to 5. But if we're not paying attention, negativity just kind of like worms its way in, and it wants to exist and it wants to function. And so stopping and looking and then deciding, I'm not going to endorse this. I'm not putting my money on this. I'm not putting my energy on this. This one is a bad one. This one doesn't feel helpful. And if I follow it, I don't like where I'm going to end up. It's not going to put me in a spot where I feel empowered and successful and proud of myself. It's going to keep me down. So paying attention has been, since my interview with Tyler, even more of a practice for me. So thanks, Tyler, and thanks, Julia Cameron, as always. My gosh, Julia, we need you on the show. We also talked about, and this one feels so big for me, so I may soapbox. We talked about accepting people for who they are when who they are is in vehement opposition to who you are, and how hard that is. And we talked about an experience that I had that I'll surmise briefly. At Goodwill, I ran into, we were checked out by a guy who had a White Lives Matter tattoo, which can be indicative of a lot of things. It can be indicative of a perspective that I think of as pretty racist, but he was very kind. He looked like he'd been through it, and I chose to see him at face value and then went back and returned something. And the woman who's checked me out then said she really didn't like him because of his racist tattoos. And I don't know if I came to his defense. I said he was really kind to us, and I saw those too, and I'm not sure what his what his life has been like, but it's possible that there was a time in his life where he needed those, or where he felt that those were important for him. And Tyler and I talked about how vulnerable that is and how hard that is, and how much I did not like her thinking that I was racist. I didn't want her thinking anything about me that I didn't want her to think. I wanted to be painted perfectly in that scenario. And I don't know if I was, but I did the thing that I believed to be the right thing, which is I didn't want to create more aggression. I did not want to speak ill on a person. I didn't want to assume something about him that I don't have any information. I don't have all of the information. I can't make an assumption. And Tyler said something really beautiful, which is, if we knew the whole story, if we knew everybody's story the way that they know it, we would have a lot more compassion and a lot more empathy. And it's true, and it's hard, and we're such pack animals, and we're so social that our fear around associating with people that we think aren't worthy or aren't valuable or drag us down or make us look bad can lead to some really dangerous results. And it leads to the kinds of division that we see now, where we struggle to cross lines or experience bipartisanship or differences, the elegance of a difference of opinion. And we talked about it in the context of Tyler's religion and the way that he believes in Jesus and the practices that Jesus taught, which is very inclusive and non-judgmental, and that is a hard way to live. And I try my best, and I feel really sure that I can do a lot better, and it is hard. So if you're out there and you've listened to Tyler's interview, or if you're listening to this and you're thinking, if this is kind of sticking in your ears, I get it. It's really difficult. It's so easy to be angry. It's so easy to say that we're right and that they're wrong, someone else is wrong. It's so easy to do that. But easy is not correct. It's not an Occam's razor situation. This isn't easy because it's the right thing to do, or because it's the good thing or the true thing. And I think in this case, the harder thing is the right thing. I think it's the better thing to do. We need to, I told you I was going to get on a soapbox. I'm up here. I'm soaping. I'm sudsed. But we need to be better at listening, and better at asking questions, and better at being non-reactive, and better at being patient with each other, and better at accepting differences. We're different. We really are. And that doesn't have to be a bad thing if we don't make it a bad thing. And I think that can be reductive. I know it's easier said than done, but those are things that we would really, really benefit from integrating into our society. In the same vein, Tyler and I talked about not closing your mind off to things, which I think is important and worth touching on. I don't know if I've mentioned it yet on the show, but Simone de Beauvoir, who's a really amazing female philosopher, has the idea of the adventurous person, which is the type of person who doesn't hold a fixed mindset. They are constantly learning and inquiring and evolving. And that elasticity and flexibility is what keeps them vital and energetic and engaged. And I think that it is easier said than done, kind of akin to being non-judgmental. It's hard to ensure that we don't cultivate a fixed mindset, because I, in some ways, think it's natural. I think we seek structure, we seek pattern, we seek to catalog. So, A is A, B is B, C is C. And when you put them together, this is the equation this is the result that you get. And life is not like that. And one way that I experienced that was really successful for me, really impactful for me, was studying science and the history of science, which changes so significantly over the course of decades and over the course of centuries. And our knowledge expands so drastically, and we benefit from that evolution, from not being overly invested in one idea as the end idea. So continuing to cultivate an open mind is it's great. It's very beneficial. It makes life, I do think actually ultimately it makes life easier. And I know that in the past, resistances that I've had, that I've let go of, have allowed me more knowledge. They've allowed me more freedom. They've allowed me more relaxation and more connection. And I continue to educate myself, which is great. I mean, I'm around and I'm here and I have a mind and I'm curious. So I don't want to be done. I want to continue learning. I want to continue educating myself kind of, forever, I mean, sheesh. Tyler and I talked about his awakening to his career as an artist via drug use. And as an avid supporter of psychedelics and MAPS and the efforts to remove the Schedule I label from certain substances, I'm all for that. And Tyler felt very differently about it. And he came down, I think, in the best way that he could, given his opinion, which was that he would neither discourage nor encourage drug use. I don't know if I'm going to go so far as to say that I encourage drug use, but I do think that drugs are extremely valuable. And I also think that that's a very complex statement. A lot of drugs that are currently approved by the FDA and administered by doctors are, I think, terrible for the human. And they are legal, so they are considered safe or usable. And I think the nature of psychedelics is necessarily more immediately complex. It's more immediately obvious. The slow burn of an SSRI or some blood thinner or whatever medicine it is that you take daily that might not manifest itself right away versus the jaw-dropping, eye-popping effects of psilocybin or MDMA or ketamine are really different, and I can appreciate that. And I do think that it's very important, and I've said this many times, I think it's very important to be safe in drug use, especially with psychedelics, because they are so impactful. That said, I think Tyler's experience was beautiful, and I definitely pushed him on the show in our interview not to feel resistant to how he came to his awareness. I don't know if I got through or if I did any perspective shifting there, but I definitely encouraged him to not feel guilty or wrong for experimenting with his psychology and with his brain and with drugs. And again, I will say, I understand that drugs can be abused, and I really appreciate that. I deeply appreciate that. And I hope that we can come to a better position as a society with drugs. And I wondered if his religious beliefs contributed in some way to his skepticism or his resistance. I know my mom raised me and my dad, but my mom was more vocal about drugs being evil. And I think at one point it was like, you'll go to hell if you use drugs. We backed off as a family. I don't think hell was ever really something that we believed in, but I think in the context of drugs, as I was younger, my mom for sure threw it in there. And I don't know what Tyler's experience it was, but I can understand feeling more fear and resistance if you have had what seems like an ultimately good time, but maybe an abusive time with drugs, and also don't believe in them as of value to the human landscape. So complicated, complex topics. I love to chew it up. Tyler and I talked about my painting a little bit. And since we just got a studio at the Gem Center and talked about it on the podcast, I I thought I'd touch on it briefly. I do paint, and I've been taking it a lot more seriously lately, which has been awesome. I've designed a lot of the Otherwise merchandise along with my genius husband, Micah Harvey. A lot of them are my paintings or my drawings. And I'm looking around at some of my work right now. It's really fun. God, that's so like, it's really fun. I love painting. I love painting so much. It's something that I didn't know that I would do until I started doing it. I think it was in 2017, and I just adore it. I really do. It's incredible. The closeness that you get to matter when you paint is so amazing. You get so close to this material. It's the brush, it's the color, it's the texture, it's whatever you're painting on. You're totally creating. It feels to me like the coolest form of creation. It's even cooler than writing to me. It's so freaking expansive. You can just go anywhere. And sure, sometimes a canvas or a board feels like a brick wall and you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do here. I hate what I'm doing. I don't get it. I don't know what I'm doing. But most of the time, and you get past that and it's whatever, but most of the time you're just like, this is infinite space. I can do anything here. I can put any color here. I can paint an emotion. I can paint a sequence of emotions. I can paint my inner child. I've been doing a series. I just started a series it's so little Jane. It's so my inner child. And it's so freaking great. I love it so much. And I feel so aligned. And it's like I'm giving myself this gift that I can then see and share with the world. And it's really special. So I do paint. I'm loving doing it more. And as I continue, we will certainly continue evolving our merch line. And I'm excited to hear what you think, and please share and don't hold back, like don't make me cry. But I mean, unless I'm crying tears of joy because you love it. But it was nice to talk about it with Tyler, and it's nice, again, going back to blurts and auditing. I definitely I've been really reductive in the past with painting. I don't know why, but I just have been. I need to investigate that, and I'll follow up with y'all and let you know what comes up, other than freaking Miss Roberta, first grade. She didn't tell me I was a bad painter, but man, sheesh. Anyway, I've been, a lot more cognizant of that, and really not endorsing the thoughts that tell me that I can't paint and also be a journalist and the host of a show. And the cool thing and the funny thing is I was painting the whole time anyway. So now I'm just enjoying it more. And y'all, I think that's everything. It was a rich combo. It was meaty. I will add, it was tough to hear Tyler refer to God as a he, and I appreciate that that's my, it's even hard to talk about this now. I struggle with the gendering of divinity. And I also appreciate that some people feel the need to do that. And I did ask Tyler, whether or not he believed that his faith was the right one. And he said that spirituality is different for everybody. So he can call God a he, that's fine. As long as he doesn't believe that I have to, I appreciate that. And I just noticed that was hard for me, and I'm going to spend a little bit more time on that. But I liked this conversation. It was difficult. Again, I don't identify as a Christian. I have a lot of mixed feelings about the Christian faith because of all of the violence that it's caused and the thought repression that it's participated in and the exploitation of humans that it's participated in. And I also see a lot of value and a lot of goodness to the teachings of Jesus and the narratives of the New Testament. And I was proud, frankly, of myself for sitting down and having this conversation and validating someone who thinks really differently than I do. And also thinks really similarly to how I think, and kind of living, searching that commonality and being able to cross lines together. So yeah, this was hard for me, and it was also really rewarding and really, really cool. And if you haven't had a chance, by the way, as a final aside, definitely go check out Tyler's work. He's an incredible painter. Oh my gosh. That's how we found him in the first place. We walked into his studio and I absolutely blacked out. He's channeling the divine when he paints. There's just no question about it. So check out his work. If you're in the Boise area, stop by the Gem Center. Stop by and see me too. I don't remember the number of my studio right now. I think it starts with a 3, but I'll put it in the notes. And thanks again for being here. Hope this was rich and rewarding and maybe a little bit funny. And we will see you on the next one.
Thanks so much again for tuning in. Hopefully there was something in that episode that inspired you that you can take with you throughout the week. Please be sure to like this episode, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and share this with a friend or family member. They might find it useful also. If you want to learn more about us, you can do so at otherwisewithjaneharvey.com, and be sure to sign up for our newsletter, Music by Dash Positive. And if you want this episode in audio form, you can listen to it wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.